Hey, what's up? It's your boy Bobby Sapphire, and today I am here with Justin, my dude. You might have you cracked it? Have you cracked the one
Did
deck
we
that
break the
everyone plays?
format? This
Listen,
is the meme. The meme deck might actually be the best deck.
here's the thing. Everyone has played against this deck. When you load up to unnamed website to think about cards online, you have faced this deck thousands of times, just like I have, and you're like, do people actually play this deck? But one of the things that we've been working on this week, so full disclosure, I have a PQ coming up in a couple days, and one of the things that we were doing to like combat the green Boba menace and the blue green that might rise to beat it is to go space. And you threw this out the other day, and I was pretty intrigued. So, what was your thought process when you were like, "What about Meta Tarkin?"
Yeah, so basically, like you said, we went to the 30-point green bobas. They're not super strong in space, but they're able to race on the ground really well. And we went to like a yellow cunning triple dark raid deck with phantoms, but it just didn't have quite the push. Um, and then I just sort of thought about Tarkin, and when we first played with Tarkin, whatever it was, like this summer, um, some of the roadblocks were ECL with a lot of ships,
Mm-hmm.
to sort of offset it, kill the Phantom right away. That was one. That was one roadblock. Another roadblock was really just like never really feeling secure. Like it would, you could actually get there with the card. Like they would just always have an answer to it. There was a lot of bounce, a lot of yellow boba,
A lot of elbow bounce.
and bouncing your ship. Bouncing your triple dark rated ship just didn't feel great. After you put the counters on the Phantom, that it just gets bounced. So kind of wrote it off. But with the new meta, and sort of this was the meme that we just called this meta Tarkin, the Boba decks don't have ECL anymore. The Boba decks have less ships. They have the green 30 point for the most part. And that deck is pushing out the yellow decks that are like the cunning decks. And because the green decks, the theory is that those decks are winning over the yellow ones. And
Right.
so far, after 2 weekends, they are. And the Boba deck is also pushing Sabine down. And Sabine can be a little bit of a trouble for Tarkin too, because it's got an ECL and it's got a lot of ships.
Right.
So is this sort of the weekend? And then we started playing it a bunch this week, and we did some pretty silly things in playtesting.
Yeah, in playtesting, and then we were just streaming in the Discord a little bit this evening, and there were games that we were like just straight out of. And then all of a sudden we had an 11-11 TIE Phantom, and the game was
Right.
over in 2 turns. So it just got a little out of hand. And I think all of those things, one of the other things from the meta that you didn't mention is that like make an opening is being played a lot less because these yellow
Yep.
decks aren't as viable. So, and it's not that good against Sabine, and Sabine is everywhere, and the Boba decks have less space. A lot of them have gone away from Crafty altogether because it's not good against
Mhm.
things like make an opening in Sabine. So there's fewer make an openings in decks. I know,
Right.
and then like I know I actually got beat by this deck in my showdown because I didn't have making openings in my Ray Red, and I was like, man, if only I could like hard mull for these making openings, maybe I would feel better about myself, because when I play Ray
And
Blue and I have it, it makes it pretty easy.
and this deck, just to be, I think as we're playing it more and we're exploring it, we're kind of, first of all, it's a blast to play. It's super fun.
It's insanely fun.
It's the in a sea of like, oh, should we ban Boba, and Boba's boring and Boba sucks and Sabine's too aggro. It's a brainless deck. It's like, oh, you can't hate on this deck. But this deck is not just a TIE Phantom deck.
It's
It
not.
is like it's. Well, let me rephrase that. It is a TIE Phantom deck, but it doesn't just play the TIE Phantom and say like your removal doesn't answer it. It plays the TIE Phantom and it makes a really, really big TIE Phantom. So like the make an opening comment is like make an opening, they have to have it in basically one action,
Right, because we're
which
right.
makes this deck a lot different than other decks.
Right. So what we're doing, and I'll just go to this next slide with the fundamentals of the deck, because this is what we're going to start talking about, is that like today, right, I was playing against a blue Bosk, and the guy showed me a make an opening with Childson, and we were like, oh, okay, well, we're never getting this online with the Phantom. And then he tapped out. Or he tapped
Right,
below 3 mana or 3 resources. So we slammed the Phantom, we put 1 token on it, and it was GG. That thing ended up
right.
becoming like a 9/9
And that's
or
the thing,
something.
it just snowballs because if it gets to a 3/3, there's just so few things that can deal with it. and matchup dependent, you kind of know what those things are. So like if it's a make an opening deck, they're not going to necessarily have like an ECL'd giant ship, right? And you sort of just know the temperature of the deck. You're like, okay, I don't actually think you have much. There's the Luke Skywalker unit is really good, the -6 ability, but you can make it so that they don't necessarily have that, and you might even be able to build it up. Another nice thing is like you can play it sort of at any time. Like it's not like you're playing it on 3 often. Many times I don't play it on 3. I actually play it much later. Turn 3, resource 4, you can make it a 3/3. But turn 4, the Tarkin turn, you can actually buff it twice. And at a certain point, like you're also playing a bunch of really cheap units. Like they can't just not do anything.
Right.
So,
and that's right.
There's these weird openings where you can like pass. You can play like a 1-mana TIE fighter and like do some funky things with that, and it just opens up a lot of possibilities.
It puts on just enough pressure that they actually have to start dealing with the other things, and then that opens the door for the lurking TIE Phantom to come out of the asteroid field and smoke them. So why don't we? We're not at the deck list yet. Did you want to talk about anything other than the fundamentals?
Yeah, so I think I kind of jumped on the fundamentals part. So one of the things that I actually just deleted from this slide was triple dark raid prior, and I think before Gen Con we were talking a lot about like, okay, triple dark raid seems great. Let's Phantom and do all these things. To me, this is triple dark raid is great to sort of find the phantoms, almost like a tutor, like a recruit. I know, Mike, you're playing a recruit in your list. I don't.
Yeah, literally recruit. Yeah.
But just to sort of find the card, it obviously has components, but it's more about lurking TIE Phantom as the linchpin of this Tarkin deck. Tarkin is the sidekick, not sort of this triple dark raid. So lurking TIE Phantom is certainly the lead. It's the Michael Jordan of this deck. Tarkin is his lead role of being second guy, hanging out with Vader, canceling destinies like the old Star Wars CCG. He's the combo. He's the other side of that. And Triple Dark Raid is actually a card that, like, if you draw a Phantom, Triple Dark Raid is not really all that important. It's great when you get your TIE Advanced and you kind of get to go off and sort of accelerate your plan. But Tarkin does a really good job of just doing it on its own. He's able to put 2 or 3 tokens on the lurking TIE, and then the rest of the deck kind of pushes it from there.
Yeah, and you can get a little toolboxy with the Triple Dark Raid too, because we have like the Cartel Spacer, right? And we have other things that you could pull in a pinch, but obviously the TIE Advance does let you get pretty vertical pretty quick. And we've also flirted with the idea of playing the Sentinel vehicle, right? The smuggle one, because that's another thing that you could just like brick the ground for an entire turn if you had to, which isn't in the list now, but like we also haven't figured out a sideboard yet, so there's like that.
Yeah, not a sideboard, and there's the list is definitely in flux. There's a bunch of cards that I've like toyed with. They've been in and out. There's this tension with Tarkin with Imperials, and then you have the Triple Dark Raid with space units. So you're kind of looking for those diamonds in the rough, and there's certainly a lot of diamonds in the rough that we'll see once we get to the list.
Yeah, and then so what makes Tarkin different from other Phantom decks? I know you talked about that a little bit, but is there something else you want to touch on in terms of calling out the Grand Admiral
so
here?
Let's really just discuss like the card Waylay, right? Like, make an opening is sort of its own little niche thing, but Waylay's not. Waylay's like a pretty heavily played card, and you can think of the concept of like, okay, your Phantom TIE gets waylaid. For other decks, it's a more of an issue because it's like, okay, that was sort of my plan. It's getting waylaid. I have to put it back. You're doing regular things. I'm doing regular things, but I'm more, less powerful in my regular things. Well, with the Phantom, you're able to sort of build it back up so quickly. Even if you've dumped a bunch, it stinks if you get waylaid like the right before you're about to win the game with this giant unit. But you might sort of differentiate and sort of place your tokens differently in those matchups too. But the Tarkin deck, if you get waylaid, well, 2 things with that. One is that they're not necessarily progressing with their getting you down to 0. They're 30 damage, and we are a 30-point base, so we've got a little room to work with there. And 2 is that we can just replay it right away. It only costs 3 when you put a token right on it and make it a 3/3 right away. So they waylay,
for 5
we play
turn.
it.
Yeah.
And it swings in for 5. Matter of fact, it actually can swing in for 6 because we can put the token on right away. So you're able just to sort of answer the answer in ways that other decks aren't. So to me, that's what makes the Tarkin deck different. And then the other thing about the Tarkin deck that's different is you get to do the token synergy of making these giant things with all of your Imperials. So there's games where new tech that we've added, you'll see on the next slide, is Scanning Officer, Imperial, play him right away, make him a 3/4, kind of like a good body right away into 2-drop. So it's sort of like, well, now what do I do? Like, it's just, this guy's just going to keep hitting, and you kind of put people in this position where you're able to sort of take actions because you've got an attack and you've got a counter, and you've also got like 3 actions because you've got these other really cheap units like TIE Fighter, that you kind of put them in this weird spot where they're forced to act, and then you've still got this second act with the Phantom coming down the line. You'll see the third act, which is kind of cool technology too.
Yeah, and then that's exactly how I lost game 3 at my showdown, was that I had space on lock, and he just went Scanning Officer, token, flip Tarkin, tie advanced onto Tarkin, and then I was and then he snuck attack for 6 on an ATST, and I was just like, oh, I had space on lockdown, but this thing pivoted. And so I think the biggest thing for me is when you showed me, and I think I literally said this to you, was just like, it doesn't feel like it has a lot of play. And then we gamed together, and you kind of showed me the lines of the ways you can actually give this deck play, and nothing makes me happier than when you take a deck like this that seems so linear, and people look at it linearly and treat it linearly, and you're able to add dimensions to it. That makes me so happy, because people love to say like, oh, you can't leverage your skill when you play a deck like this, but that's not the case. You can leverage a lot of different skills.
This is not that. And I've always loved these decks. I've loved like the make them have it decks. But then there's the avenue of like, you're doing the math in your head and you're understanding mannerisms at the table, and you see that they're starting to do the thing in their chair. They sit up a little bit because they're anxious and they know that they've got 4 outs that they need to draw in the next thing.
I do that. I sit on my
and you were able to pick that up as a tell, and you're just like, you know what? I'm going to dump my hand on this card because I don't actually think you have it. And if my hunch is wrong, we'll see what happens in this game. But if my hunch is right, the game's just over. So I like games like that.
I drew my change of heart.
Ooh, baby.
Take yo, Phantom. All right, so here's the list, and it's pretty. It does the thing that we talk about a lot. It's clean. It's all 3 ofs and then 1, 2 of. You're on the Viper Probe Droids right now as your extra 2-drop.
Yeah, so I have 5 cards that look at their hand, and I can play them all in turn 1. I really like that because that allows you to actually just slam it if you have it and get the ball rolling right away, giving them like sort of a little bit of window to draw cards. But also Bazine can then take the hate.
Yeah, just take the problem
Phantom
card
away. But Probe Droid, you can say, okay, say you see a waylay, or say you see a make an opening, something along those lines. You can kind of do what we were saying of just sort of playing it cool. Like, let's make my Probe Droid big now, and if we want to waylay that, go for it. Replay it and look at your hand again. So I like that. It's an Imperial. You can buff it. It's a pretty good card against like Sabine to trade with like a Battlefield Marine early on too. And I think one of the nice things about this deck is that it does have some ground in the early game. So you're not totally like, if the opponent sort of thinks like, oh yeah, I'm gonna like mulligan for a Bright Hope or something like that. Well, that might not actually work out that well for them, because you've got a little bit of, you can shift gears. That's a new dimension here. And the other list that I saw this summer were playing like the Star Destroyers and the AT-AT, and they were going really big. That's completely gone in this variation. This is 44 cards that cost 4 or less, and then the Barrage is a clear card that goes in, and then Maul was something that you and I worked on about just saying, you know what, they're probably going to just jam as many units as they can out, and we're not necessarily killing them, or they might have killed our Tarkin with something, and
please play a Greedo or something.
Right, like a Greedo, just like jamming something, and then we've got just that extra push damage at the end with Maul, and he's actually kind of cool because you've got Bazine and you've got Cartel Spacer too, so you can throw the damage on there and have a clean Maul at the end.
Yeah, and that was really great because we were like, I talked about getting hit by that ATST for 6 and being like, man, that's so much damage. I really want to do that. But there aren't too many games where Maul doesn't have anyone to hit since we're all space. And Tarkin doesn't trade with anybody, right? So Tarkin's like gonna soften some people up when he, as they're taking him down, if they're even hitting him. So it just leaves another option. And then I think when we first brewed this, it didn't have barrage, but we said like we're making these monsters, we might as well play barrage. It's
Yeah,
a good way
originally
to
we
win
had
the
like
race.
outmaneuver. We had outmaneuvers thinking that we were all space, but then we're like, let's just get barrage. And once we've added barrage, we've gotten some wild ones too, because you've like making a giant creature with Tarkin, and then you draw like you top deck a barrage, and you're like, holy cow, like this is gonna do 9 damage or whatever.
Right, and it just solidifies the race, which is really nice. And then swoop down gives us another way to not have to worry about like the ground race. There have been plenty of games where we just like we have a big phantom, but to make sure that we win the race, we swoop down and kill a Boba or kill a Rey or something like that.
Yeah,
even
swoop down's
through an
pretty
Obi-Wan.
insane.
Yeah, swoop down
Here's the
tech has
cards
been
that I
crazy.
think it gives Saboteur. So if they do have like a card like a Bright Hope or the some of the cards that the villain hero
System Patrol
blue
Craft,
have,
yeah, just any
different
Conquer
things
Ground
like that.
Protector,
It can just go through. You don't get the
Interceptor.
+2, but you can just go through. So there's been a couple of games where like that we've seen where you can kill them in 2 turns, in 2 attacks. So you just take the first attack if you have the swoop down, and sometimes they'll play a Sentinel thinking that they're safe, and then you've got the swoop down to just win the game instantaneously. Just claim and play it. That happens pretty frequently because you're attacking with 1 giant unit. The other thing though is that a 3 power card can kill Sabine with swoop down. It can kill like a Sabine leader with swoop down.
Right. Yeah.
So any of your space.
Yeah, any of your space just like comes down and kills
Sabine
her.
and doesn't die. Like just doesn't take any damage.
Yeah.
Pretty much by the point that Rey is a card that can sort of race and gain life, and that's something that can kind of put us in a precarious situation, and then they can eventually get cards like Redemption and Luke, which can be bad for us. So deleting a Rey right away is a way to sort of pretty low risk. I mean, Rey's doing 1 back at that point. Actually, no, it's doing nothing back
if it's right off
if
the
she has an attack.
Right.
So all you need to have is a 4 power unit, which at that point in the game, their Rey has to take an action to get up there. You could have put a counter on something with Tarkin prior to that. So pretty likely that you'll be able to get rid of
the units that
Rey,
you're really worried about. Yeah.
And the other thing too is that like sometimes a Sentinel will actually protect like other units, not necessarily like a base, but it'll protect other units, and you can actually just like go right through them. Like today you were playing a game against Bosk, and there was a Childston protecting the Bosk, but that didn't matter because we could actually kill it.
Right, yeah, he put a top target on my guy, and we were like, oh, we can actually use swoop down to trade with the Bosk through the Childston, and he only gains 4, he doesn't gain 8.
Right.
And then we just swung in 2 turns. And that's the killing someone with a Phantom in 2 actions, like, attack, claim, attack, it comes up a lot. And Justin's been a big proponent of telling me to like make sure you get that first attack in, because you're going to be able to like do it again next turn if they can't answer it, or if you have a swoop down, it's basically free. But we got into so many races today when I was testing Boba Yellow where like I ran out of actions. You know what I mean? Like my opponent beat me before I could take enough actions to beat them, and Phantom always wins the race because they're swinging for like we've swung for 13, 15 today.
Right. And then the last thing with swoop down is one of the best cards against us is actually 7 Fleet Defender, just because you can't actually kill it, and swoop down actually does kill it. It removes the counter, the Saboteur effect. So that's a sort of lesser known reason for that card.
Yeah, the Saboteur part is cool. You don't get the -2 on there.
You don't get the -2. You would trade, so you wouldn't. Like, so
unless
one
you're
of your
buffed
lead
higher,
blocks.
Yeah.
You've got TIE Fighter, you've got Cartel Spacer, and you've got the 2/1 Vanguard ship as lead blocks. I cut Mercenary Gunship because I was running into situations where they would actually steal it, and then I had to deal with it, and I just didn't really want to go there, so I had to steal back, and I just get slowed down. So that's a card that I think could make its way back in. Right now I don't have Mercenary Gunship as sort of that extra lead block. I wanted to sort of shift down to see like how light could I go on turn 1 space plays, where I felt comfortable, but that's a card that we could add back in. But overall, I just think
it's
our early game where we've got a lot of 2-drops, and we're kind of pushing the envelope with the 2-drops, which is really nice. And swoop down really helps them. All the space ones kind of kill something early and trade in the same way that like it's just a straight up removal spell because your guy's not dying.
And then talk about your newest tech, which is the Phase 3 Dark Trooper in this deck.
Yeah, so initially we had like the Snow Trooper 2-drop, the 2/3 who
Shore
gets
Trooper.
bigger. Shore Trooper, sorry. And then I was looking for Imperials, and I was like, I would love just like another thing that I could sort of make beefy. Because one of the things that I was recognizing is that Scanning Officer was becoming like a pretty big threat sometimes, but I didn't really want a 2-drop. Probe Droid and was fine, but I was like looking for it, and then I came across Phase Trooper, and pretty remarkable first iterations with him is that he's a unit that does a lot of funky things. Like if you play him not on curve, but if you play him, let's say on the 4th resource turn, and just immediately put a counter on him, and they don't have a way to do 4 damage on the ground, and he does some Childston like things, but you can actually like grow him like more and more. So if he lives into the next turn, you can then like just first action grow him again, lift your Tarkin. Your Tarkin's now protected. I'm gonna now make him like a 6/6. I'm gonna now I'm gonna play a TIE advanced and make him like a 7/7. Now I'm drawing my barrages. Like he's become this weird thing, and obviously you can kill him with removal spells, takedowns and stuff like that for a short period of time. You can kill him with stuff, but he becomes like this other thing, and then similar to the Phantom, like if you bounce him, he's a 3-cost card that you can just play again and put a counter right on. And if they have to like attack him with 2 things, if they ever get caught in a situation where they like I have to attack with like a 3/3, well then he becomes a 5/5. He attacks in, and then it's just he's
gets
kind
out
of been
hand.
able to
It's a snowball, yeah,
in really really cool ways. So he's been some new tech that I really like, and he works great with Bazine because you can kind of like probe their hands, see if they can answer this right away. Maybe they've got something like a surprise strike that might be able to one-shot him. You take that, and pretty cool card.
Yeah, all in all, I really like it. I really like the 5 look at the hand, peek things going on in this deck. I do miss the Merc gunships a little bit, though. I have been.
They could certainly
them.
be probe droids. Merc. I think Merc gunship probe droid is something that I would look at. I would also look at like you could probably shave a scanning officer and like put one in the sideboard that we need to develop. Like that's something that I've thought a little bit about. They're good, but I have recognized that like and maybe it's just the meta sort of what we're looking at. I haven't hit a ton of smuggle down that early, but can be helpful. And there is some, you're going to get the cool game where you play against like a Kira and they're holding up, like make an opening and you're able to like mess up their mana and then maybe you can jam them something else out.
Yeah, no, it's really good as a spell though. And then like if you ever did play against like a Yellow Han, obviously like that you wait for them to play tech or something and you can time walk them the next turn. So it can get out of hand quick, but that's kind of the name of the game. It's this deck gets out of hand.
Yellow Han, you're probably just like time walking them like always.
Yeah, you're just holding it. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to the final slide, which is it's your birthday this weekend. Let's go. I'll be at PQ, and you found
winning me a nice trophy.
Yeah, and you found this German. Like you have to order this right now while we're recording.
I know. I feel like I want to.
How much is it?
So my thing with showcases, some amount of euros. I like want to do showcases for like decks that I played. So I did bite the bullet and got a Sabine showcase, and then I got a CAD because I've been working on some CAD lists. But now that I'm becoming the Tarkin man, especially the German, it feels like he's the German guy to rock out with. So Moff talking.
Yeah, Bowden. Yeah, Unfuhr. Yeah, this is good. I think you should order it. I think that art is sick too. Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge Tarkin fan. Like, I have my Tarkin statue right here from the Star Wars miniatures game. We obviously
we have our coin. We saw that in the beginning. The coin. Star Wars CCG. I mentioned this card, but Grand Moff Tarkin was sort of like a really iconic card early on. Came out in the very first set in 1995, and in conjunction, it was a combo card, much like the deck we have here. In conjunction with Darth Vader, would cancel a Battle Destiny. Battle Destiny is sort of the way that you fought in that game. So
cancel any Destiny,
very powerful. Cancel any Destiny, dual Destinies, all different types of things, weapon Destinies. So Tarkin was sort of an iconic card, and maybe he'll be that way in Star Wars Unlimited as well.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for this deck. I don't know if I have the cojones to play it this weekend, but it's certainly on the short list. So I got to get back to gaming.
Right.
Later.